The universe was old. Older than most beings could ever understand. And in all that time, across all those billions of years, the Galactic Concord had seen many things. They had watched stars die and be born again. They had built cities that floated between worlds. They had mapped every corner of known space and cataloged every species that walked, crawled, or swam across 1,000 different planets. The Concord was made up of 17 alien races. Some looked like tall insects with shimmering wings. Others were made of pure light and energy. A few resembled great stone creatures that moved slowly but thought deeply. Together, they had kept peace in the galaxy for over 40,000 years. They believed they knew everything worth knowing. They were wrong. High Archivist Velketh floated through the ancient halls of Thessar Prime, the oldest world in the Concord. His body was made of soft blue light that shifted and changed with his moods. Today, that light flickered with worry. Something strange was happening in a forgotten corner of space, and no one could explain it. For weeks, Velketh had studied the data streams, energy readings that made no sense. Radio signals in patterns that seemed almost random but somehow were not. Ships appearing and disappearing in a quarantined zone that had been sealed off for millions of years. His search led him deep beneath the crystal towers of Thessar Prime, down to the sealed vaults where the oldest records were kept. No one had opened these vaults in living memory. The security codes had been lost and found again so many times that most believed the vaults contained nothing important. Velketh knew better. He had spent 300 years studying the fragments of precursor writings scattered across the galaxy. The precursors were the first ones. They had existed billions of years ago, long before any current species had evolved. They had seeded life across the stars, engineering the evolution of every known civilization. And then they had vanished, leaving behind only ruins and riddles. When Velketh finally broke the seal on the deepest vault, he found something that made his light turn cold and white with fear. It was a prophecy. Not written on stone or crystal, but carved into the fabric of reality itself. The words hung in the air, glowing with an energy that had not faded in 4 billion years. Velketh read the words slowly, his mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. The prophecy spoke of a small blue world circling an ordinary yellow star. It described a species that would rise from that world, a species unlike any other. The precursors called them the persistent ones, and the dreamers who refused to die. But it was the warning that made Velketh's ancient heart freeze. Do not engage them, the prophecy read. Do not provoke them. Do not underestimate them. For they alone among all our children were not designed. They simply became. They are the accident we did not plan, the variable we could not control. They are chaos given form, and they will not stop. They cannot stop. It is not in their nature. The species the precursors warned about called themselves humans. Velketh immediately brought his discovery to the High Council. The 17 leaders of the Concord gathered in their great chamber, their forms casting strange shadows on the walls. Some laughed at the prophecy. Others dismissed it as ancient superstition. A few, the oldest and wisest, grew very quiet. These humans, said Velketh, projecting images of their world onto the chamber walls, have only been traveling between stars for 300 years. They are young, primitive by our standards. Their ships are slow, and their weapons are weak. Then why should we fear them? Asked Grand Admiral Zorath, a massive creature covered in thick armor plates. We could destroy their entire civilization in a single day. Perhaps, said Velketh. But look at what they have done in just 3 centuries. The images changed. They showed human colonies on frozen moons, where temperatures dropped to levels that would kill most species instantly. They showed mining stations on asteroids made of pure toxic metal. They showed a research base orbiting so close to a dying star that its shields glowed red with constant heat. Every world they have claimed, Velketh continued, was deemed uninhabitable by our surveys. Every environment they have conquered was labeled impossible by our scientists. They do not follow the rules of survival that govern all other species. When they should die, they adapt. When they should give up, they try harder. The council murmured among themselves. This was troubling, but not terrifying. Then Velketh showed them the final images: human history, the wars they had fought against each other, the plagues that had killed millions, the ice ages that had nearly wiped them out, the weapons they had built that could destroy their entire planet. "They have faced extinction many times," said Velketh. "Not from outside forces, but from themselves and their own world. Each time, they survived. Each time, they came back stronger. The precursors engineered every other species to be stable, predictable, controllable. But these humans were never meant to exist at all. They evolved on their own, through pure chance and determination. They are not part of any plan." Far away, on the other side of the galaxy, Commander Katie Brooks stood on the bridge of her ship, the Horizon. She was a tall woman, with short dark hair and calm gray eyes that missed nothing. She had been flying ships since she was 16 and commanding them since she was 30. Now, at 42, she was one of Earth's most respected officers. "Commander," said her science officer, Marcus Chen, looking up from his console with a puzzled expression. "I'm picking up some very strange readings at the edge of our sensor range." Katie walked over to look at his screen. The data made no sense. Energy signatures that flickered in and out of existence. Patterns that seemed almost like a language. "What do you think?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "I have no idea. But whatever it is, it's not natural." Katie looked out at the stars through the main viewport. Somewhere out there, something was watching them. She could feel it in her bones. That old instinct that had kept humans alive through countless dangers. "Set a course," she said quietly. "Let's go say hello." She did not know that her decision would change the fate of 2 galaxies. She did not know that ancient beings were already debating whether her entire species should be destroyed. She only knew that there was a mystery out there, and humans had never been able to resist a mystery. The Horizon turned toward the unknown and began to fly. The Concorde did not listen to Velketh's warnings. They had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years. They had defeated enemies far more powerful than a species that had only just learned to travel between stars. The prophecy of the precursors was interesting, they decided, but surely exaggerated. Ambassador Shinara was chosen to lead the first official contact mission. She was a tall, graceful being, with skin like polished silver and eyes that changed color with her emotions. She had negotiated peace between warring civilizations. She had calmed species on the edge of destroying themselves. Surely, she thought, she could handle a few primitive humans. Her fleet of 12 observation vessels entered human space quietly, cloaking themselves from detection. For 3 weeks, they watched. They studied human colonies, human ships, human behavior. What they saw confused them deeply. On a frozen moon called Europa, humans had built a city under the ice. The temperatures outside would kill most species in seconds. The pressure would crush their bodies, yet humans lived there, worked there, raised children there. They had found a way to survive in a place that should have been impossible. On a distant asteroid belt, human miners worked in conditions of zero gravity and constant radiation. They wore suits that barely protected them. Many died in accidents, yet more humans always came to replace them, drawn by the promise of wealth and adventure. Near a dying red star, a research station orbited so close that its outer hull glowed with heat. The scientists inside studied the star's death, gathering data that no other species would risk their lives to collect. When asked why they took such risks, they simply said they wanted to know. "They are insane," reported one of Shinara's officers. No rational species would accept such losses for such small gains. Shinara was not so sure. There was something in the way humans moved, the way they spoke to each other, the way they faced danger without hesitation. It was not insanity. It was something else, something she could not name. The accident happened on the 15th day. One of the Concorde observation vessels drifted too close to a human mining station on Europa. Its cloaking field flickered for just a moment. The station's automated defense systems detected the flicker and fired a warning shot. The Concorde ship, surprised by the attack, returned fire without thinking. The shot was meant to disable the station's weapons. Instead, it hit the main power core. The explosion killed 14 human workers instantly. Shinara watched in horror as the news spread across human communication channels. She expected panic. She expected fear. She expected humans to flee from the powerful alien ships that had just revealed themselves. What happened instead changed everything she believed about the universe. Within 1 hour, Earth's United Defense Coalition had mobilized every warship within range. Within 2 hours, civilian vessels began volunteering to join the response fleet. Cargo ships, transport vessels, even personal spacecraft designed for family trips. Thousands of humans, most of whom had never fired a weapon in their lives, were racing toward Europa. "This is impossible," said Shinara's tactical officer, his scales turning pale with confusion. "Our analysis predicted that humans would retreat and negotiate. Their fleet is outnumbered. Their technology is inferior. Why are they attacking?" Shinara had no answer. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hartwell led the first wave of human interceptors. She was 31 years old, with red hair that she kept tied back and freckles across her nose. Her hands were steady on her controls even though her heart was pounding. She had never fought aliens before. She had never fought anyone before. But 14 of her people were dead. And that was enough. "All pilots, listen up," she said over the radio. "We are outnumbered and outgunned. Our ships are slower and our weapons are weaker. But those things out there killed our people, our miners, our workers, people with families who were just trying to make a living." She paused, watching the alien vessels grow larger on her screen. "So here's what we're going to do. We're going to fly straight at them. We're going to make them think we've lost our minds. And then we're going to show them what happens when you hurt the people we love." The human ships attacked in a formation that no Concord tactician could understand. They did not line up in neat rows. They did not follow standard engagement protocols. Instead, they scattered like angry insects, coming from every direction at once. Lisa flew her interceptor directly at the largest Concord ship. Alarms screamed in her cockpit as enemy weapons locked onto her. At the last possible second, she pulled up, missing the hull by less than 10 meters. Behind her, she dropped a cluster of magnetic mines that attached to the ship's shield generators. Other pilots did the same. They flew patterns that seemed suicidal but somehow were not. They trusted their reflexes, trusted their instincts, trusted each other in ways that no networked or hive mind species could comprehend. Each pilot made their own decisions in split seconds, creating a coordinated chaos that functioned perfectly. Danny Reeves, tactical officer on the horizon, watched the battle from a safe distance. He was recording everything, sending data back to Earth. What he saw made him laugh out loud. "They don't know what to do," he said to Commander Brooks. "Look at them. They're trying to predict our movements. But there's nothing to predict. Every pilot is flying by. Gut feeling." The Concorde fleet tried to regroup. Their targeting computers could not track ships that moved without logic. Their formations were designed to counter organized attacks, not this swirling madness. One by one, their vessels took damage from mines, from collisions, from weapons fire that came from directions they never expected. Shinara ordered a retreat. Her ships, several of them badly damaged, fled toward open space. The humans did not pursue. They had made their point. As her fleet limped away, Shinara sat in her command chair and stared at nothing. She thought about the prophecy Velketh had shown the council. She thought about the warnings of the precursors. She thought about how foolish they had all been to dismiss those warnings. She opened a channel to the High Council. Her message was short. She did not have words for what she had witnessed. She only knew that everything was about to change. "The precursors were right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Forgive us." On Europa, humans were already rebuilding the damaged station. They mourned their dead, but they did not stop working. They never stopped working. Within a week, the station was operational again. Within a month, new workers had arrived to replace those who had been lost. In the conquered High Council chamber, 17 species began to argue about what to do with humanity. Some wanted war, some wanted peace. Some wanted to build a wall around human space and pretend they did not exist. None of them realized that the humans had already made their own decision. They would not be ignored. They would not be contained. They would not be stopped. They were coming. The Galactic Concord had never faced a problem like humanity. For 40,000 years, their 17-member species had agreed on almost everything. They had built their civilization on logic, careful planning, and the belief that all problems could be solved through reason. Humans were not reasonable. Humans did not follow logic. Humans were something the Concord had never encountered before, and it terrified them. 3 factions quickly formed in the High Council. The first called themselves the Exterminators. They were led by Grand Admiral Zorath, the armored warrior who believed that the only good enemy was a dead enemy. He wanted to gather the combined fleets of all 17 species and burn human space to ashes before the humans could grow any stronger. They are a disease, Zorath argued, his massive claws scraping against his throne. The precursors warned us, if we do not destroy them now, they will destroy us later. It is simple mathematics. The second faction called themselves the Isolationists. They were led by Speaker Thelvas, a being made of living crystal who valued peace above all things. Thelvas did not want to fight humans. He wanted to build a barrier around their space using the most powerful technology the Concord possessed. Humans would be trapped in their small corner of the galaxy forever, unable to expand or threaten anyone. War is wasteful, Thelvas said, his crystal body chiming like bells as he spoke. Let them have their few hundred worlds. We have millions. Why should we sacrifice our children to destroy beings who pose no real threat to us? The third faction had no name at first. They were led by Velketh, the archivist who had discovered the prophecy. He believed that both other factions were wrong. He believed that the precursors had not warned the Concord to fear humans, but to respect them, to learn from them, perhaps even to welcome them. You have all read only part of the prophecy, Velketh told the council. There is more. The precursors did not write those warnings because humans are evil. They wrote them because humans are different, and different does not always mean dangerous. No one listened to him. The exterminators and isolationists had more power, more ships, more influence. Velketh was just an old archivist who spent too much time reading ancient texts. While the council argued, Commander Katie Brooks led the Horizon on a reconnaissance mission near Concord space. Earth's military leaders wanted information about their new enemies. How many ships did they have? What kind of weapons? Where were their weak points? Katie knew the mission was dangerous. She accepted it anyway. That was what commanders did. The trap was well designed. The Concord had learned from their defeat at Europa. This time, they did not attack the humans directly. Instead, they lured the Horizon into an asteroid field where sensors were useless, then surrounded the ship with overwhelming force. Commander, said Marcus Chen, his voice calm despite the fear in his eyes. I'm counting 47 enemy vessels. They have us completely surrounded. Katie looked at the tactical display. There was no way out. Fighting would mean death. Running would mean death. She had only one choice. Open a channel, she said. Tell them we surrender. The crew of the Horizon was taken prisoner and brought to a massive station deep in conquered space. Katie expected torture. She expected interrogation. Instead, the aliens simply locked them in comfortable cells and left them alone. They're not hurting us, said Danny Reeves, pacing back and forth in his cell. Why aren't they hurting us? Because they don't know what to do with us, Katie replied. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, watching the alien guards through the transparent wall. They're scared, Danny laughed. Scared? Of us? Of what we represent? Katie stood up and pressed her hand against the wall. Think about it, Danny. They've ruled this galaxy for thousands of years. They've never met anyone who could challenge them, and then we show up. We beat their ships at Europa with civilian vessels and cargo freighters. We refuse to run when any logical species would have fled. We're something they've never seen before. and they have no idea how to handle it. Through the walls of their prison, the humans could hear the aliens arguing. Their translator devices picked up fragments of the debates happening throughout the station. They learned about the three factions. They learned about the prophecy. They learned that some aliens wanted them dead, others wanted them trapped, and a few wanted to understand them. Katie called her crew together. They met in a common area where the guards allowed them to gather for meals. There were 23 of them, all that remained of the Horizon's complement. Engineers, scientists, pilots, soldiers. Every one of them was scared. Every one of them wanted to go home. "We're going to escape," Katie told them quietly. "And we're going to do more than escape. We're going to send a message to Earth. Everything we've learned about the Concord, about the prophecy, about their weaknesses. Our people need to know what they're facing." Engineer Tyler Morrison raised his hand. He was a thin man with nervous energy and brilliant ideas. "Commander, we don't have any equipment. They took everything. How are we supposed to build a communication device?" Katie smiled. "Look around you, Tyler. What do you see?" Tyler looked. He saw food dispensers on the walls, light fixtures on the ceiling, cleaning supplies in a storage closet. Basic, everyday items that the aliens had not thought to remove. "I see parts," he said slowly, understanding growing in his eyes. "I see a lot of parts." Dr. Amanda Price, the ship's medical officer, volunteered to create distractions. She was a kind woman with gentle hands and a mind that never stopped working. "The cleaning supplies have chemicals that can make smoke," she said. "Harmless smoke. But the aliens won't know that. It should cause enough confusion for us to work." Security Officer Nate Collins had been counting. He was a large man with a shaved head and eyes that noticed everything. "The guards rotate every 6 hours," he said. "But there's a gap. 12 minutes between shifts where no one is watching the secondary corridors. That's our window." For 2 weeks, they prepared. Tyler built a communication device from pieces of food dispensers and light fixtures. Amanda mixed chemicals that would create thick, white smoke. Nate mapped every guard route, every camera position, every possible escape path. When they were ready, Katie addressed her crew one final time. "What we do tonight will start a war," she said. "Maybe the biggest war humanity has ever faced. But we don't have a choice. If we stay silent, Earth won't know what's coming. Our families won't know. Our friends won't know. They'll be caught unprepared when the Concord finally decides what to do with us." She looked at each of them in turn. "We're getting out of here. We're warning Earth. And we're showing these aliens exactly why the precursors were afraid of us." The escape began at midnight. Smoke filled the corridors. Alarms screamed. Guards ran in every direction, unable to find the source of the chaos. Through it all, 23 humans moved like shadows, following paths that Nate had memorized, using tools that Tyler had built, protected by distractions that Amanda had created. They reached the communication array. Tyler connected his makeshift device. The message went out, carrying everything they had learned across the vast darkness of space. Before they left the station, Katie found a terminal that connected to Velketh's personal network. She left him a message. "You don't have to be our enemy, but if you choose to be, understand this. We survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own self-destruction. We didn't come this far to be stopped by fear." Then they ran for the escape pods, and the war truly began. The message from Katie Brooks reached Earth 3 days after her escape. Admiral Kevin Shaw read it in his office at Luna Command, his coffee growing cold in his hand as the words sank in. Ancient prophecies, alien factions arguing about whether to destroy humanity. A civilization that had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years, now deciding the fate of his entire species. He did not waste time on fear. He called a meeting of every military leader on Earth and began planning for war. The exterminator faction struck first. Grand Admiral Zorath had grown tired of waiting for the Council to reach a decision. He gathered a fleet of his most loyal ships and attacked 3 human colonies without warning. The first was a farming world called New Kansas. 15,000 people lived there, growing crops to feed distant stations and ships. Zorath's weapons turned their fields to ash and their cities to craters. The few survivors sent desperate messages before the communications arrays were destroyed. The second was a mining colony in the outer reaches. 20,000 workers and their families, gone in minutes. The third was a scientific research station studying unusual energy readings. The scientists were still trying to understand what they had found when the bombs fell. 8,000 people died without ever knowing why. 50,000 humans. Farmers, miners, scientists, children and grandparents. Friends and lovers. All dead because one alien admiral decided that humans were too dangerous to live. Earth's response shook the galaxy. Within 6 months, human engineers had taken apart every piece of Concord technology they had captured. They studied it, understood it, and began to improve it. Within a year, the first new warships rolled out of the orbital shipyards. They were faster than Concord vessels. Their weapons hit harder. Their shields held longer. Human creativity had taken alien technology and made it better. Admiral Kevin Shaw personally led the fleet to Kepler's Reach, a star system at the edge of conquered territory. Intelligence reports indicated that Zorath was gathering his forces there, preparing for a full invasion of human space. Shaw intended to stop him before he could begin. The Battle of Kepler's Reach would be remembered for 10,000 years. The Concord fleet outnumbered the humans 5-1. They had more ships, more weapons, more experience. Their commanders had fought wars that lasted centuries. They had conquered species that humans had never even heard of. By every measure of logic and reason, they should have won easily. They did not understand humans. Captain Chris Lawson commanded the carrier New Boston. He was a young man for such responsibility, only 35 years old, with a quick smile and eyes that turned hard as stone in battle. When he saw the enemy fleet arranged in perfect formation, he laughed. "They're lined up like targets at a shooting range," he told his pilots. "Let's mess up their nice neat rows." The human attack made no sense to Concord tacticians. Fighters scattered in all directions. Flying patterns that seemed random. Bombers dove straight at enemy ships, then pulled away at the last second. Destroyers charged into the middle of enemy formations, dropped mines, and vanished before anyone could lock weapons on them. "What are they doing?" demanded one Concord commander, watching his display in confusion. "There is no strategy here. No pattern. They are fighting like animals." He was wrong. There was a pattern, but it was not a pattern that computers could predict or logic could follow. It was the pattern of human instinct, human creativity, human madness. Each pilot made their own decisions in the heat of battle, trusting their gut feelings and split-second judgments. Together, they created something that no hive mind or networked species could ever replicate: organized chaos. Ships died on both sides. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it was over, Zorath's fleet was broken. The Grand Admiral himself was killed when 3 human fighters simultaneously rammed his flagship's bridge. The pilots ejected at the last moment, tumbling through space until rescue ships picked them up. "Beautiful insanity," one captured Concord officer called it. He could not stop shaking his head. "We have fought wars for thousands of years. We have never seen anything like this." But the battle was only half of what changed the Concord's minds about humanity. The other half happened on the occupied colony of New Anchorage. Corporal Becky Santos was a medic. She was 26 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and hands that never trembled, even under fire. When the Concord forces invaded New Anchorage, her unit was cut off from the main defense force, surrounded, outnumbered, trapped. Her commanding officer was killed in the first hour. The other soldiers looked to her for guidance. She did not hesitate. "We're not dying here," she told them. "And neither are our people." For 47 days, Becky Santos conducted a one-woman resistance operation. She moved through the occupied city like a ghost, finding survivors and leading them to safety. She sabotaged enemy communications, destroyed supply depots, and freed prisoners from holding cells. She had no weapons except what she could steal. She had no backup except the handful of civilians who chose to help her. By the time human reinforcements finally arrived, Becky had saved 340 colonists. She had also destroyed an entire enemy communications network, blinding the occupying forces and making the liberation possible. But it was what she did after the fighting stopped that truly mattered. The rescue team found her in a bombed-out hospital, treating wounded aliens, enemy soldiers. The same species that had killed her friends and occupied her colony. She was using her medical supplies, her training, her precious time to keep them alive. The rescue team's leader stared at her. "Corporal, what are you doing?" Becky looked up. Her face was tired, her hands were covered in strange-colored blood. But her eyes were calm and certain. "They were dying," she said simply. "I'm a medic. That's what I do." The story spread across the Concord like fire. Here was a human who had every reason to hate aliens. She had watched them kill her people, destroy her home, threaten everything she loved. Yet when she found wounded enemies, she treated them. She saved them. She showed mercy to those who had shown none to her. The isolationist and integrationist factions used Becky's story to argue against the war. "These humans are not animals," said Speaker Thelvas. "They are not mindless destroyers. Look at what this woman did. Look at the choice she made. Is this the behavior of a species we should fear? Or is this something else entirely?" Even some exterminators began to question their beliefs. If humans could show such compassion to their enemies, perhaps they were not the monsters the prophecy seemed to describe. Perhaps the prophecy meant something different. Perhaps they had been wrong about everything. On Earth, Admiral Shaw received reports of the changing mood in the Concord. He began to hope that peace might still be possible. But he knew that hope was not enough. He needed to talk to someone who understood what was really happening. He needed to talk to Velketh. And somewhere, in the ruins of New Anchorage, Becky Santos finished treating the last wounded alien, stood up, and asked the rescue team if they had any spare medical supplies. There were always more people who needed help. The moon had no name. It was a small gray rock, orbiting a forgotten planet in the space between human territory and the Concord. No one lived there. No one cared about it. That made it perfect for a secret meeting. Commander Katie Brooks, newly promoted to ambassador after her escape from the prison station, arrived first. She came alone. As agreed, her shuttle landed in a valley between two dead mountains, where the dust had not been disturbed in millions of years. Velketh arrived an hour later. His body of blue light seemed dimmer than usual, tired from the long journey and the heavy weight of what he carried. He floated down from his ship and stopped a few meters from where Katie stood. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Human and alien. Two beings from opposite sides of a conflict that had already killed too many. Two beings who hoped they could stop it from killing more. "Thank you for coming," said Katie. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," said Velketh. "After everything that has happened, you had no reason to trust me." Katie smiled slightly. "I read your writings about the precursors. You've spent your whole life trying to understand them. You're not like the others. You don't want to destroy us. You want to understand us." "I do," Velketh admitted. "But understanding is not enough anymore. The Concord is fracturing. The war is spreading. Every day, more of your people die. More of mine die. We are racing toward a future that will leave nothing but ashes." He moved closer, his light pulsing with emotion. "I brought something to show you. Something that may change everything." From within his energy form, Velketh produced a small crystal. It glowed with the same ancient light that Katie had seen in recordings of the prophecy. But this was different. This was more. "The prophecy that I showed the council was incomplete," Velketh explained. "Our ancestors found the warning, but they did not find the rest. They did not look hard enough. They assumed they knew what the precursors meant, and they stopped searching." He activated the crystal. Words appeared in the air between them, burning with light that had lasted 4 billion years. Katie read them slowly, her breath catching in her throat. "When the persistent ones reach for the stars," the prophecy began, "do not stand in their path, for they will overcome all obstacles. But do not fear them, for they carry within them something we could never engineer. The capacity to choose compassion over conquest." The words continued. Katie felt tears forming in her eyes as she read, "They will burn like fire, but fire also brings warmth. They will fight like cornered beasts, but they will also sacrifice themselves for strangers. They are chaos, but they are also hope. Welcome them as equals, and they will pull you toward greatness you cannot imagine. Oppose them, and they will surpass you anyway, but you will have lost the chance to grow alongside them." The final words hung in the air, glowing brighter than all the rest. We made them by accident. They are our greatest mistake. They are also our greatest gift. Katie stood in silence for a long time after the words faded. She thought about everything her people had been through. The wars, the plagues, the struggles, the moments when it seemed like humanity would destroy itself, and the moments when they chose to be better instead. "The precursors didn't warn you to stay away from us because we were dangerous," she said finally. "They warned you because they knew what you would try to do. You would try to control us, contain us, stop us from becoming what we could become." "Yes," said Velketh, "and in doing so, we would lose the greatest opportunity our civilizations have ever had." "What do we do now?" Velketh's light shifted to a warmer color, something like hope. "Now we end this war. Now we show the Concord what the precursors truly meant. Now we prove that humans and aliens can be more together than we could ever be apart." The peace process took months. There were debates, arguments, threats, and moments when everything nearly fell apart. Admiral Kevin Shaw negotiated with Concord military leaders who had spent their whole lives believing that humans were monsters. Speaker Thelvas worked to convince the isolationists that a barrier around human space would be a mistake for everyone. Velketh presented the complete prophecy to the High Council and watched as thousands of years of fear began to crumble. The Treaty of Thesser Prime was signed on the anniversary of the Battle of Kepler's Reach. Representatives from 17 alien species gathered in the Great Crystal Hall, where the Concord had been born 40,000 years before. And standing among them, for the first time in history, were representatives of humanity. Ambassador Katie Brooks spoke for her people. She stood before beings of light and stone and living crystal, before warriors and scholars and leaders of civilizations older than human history. She was not afraid. She had never been afraid. Not when it truly mattered. "We came to the stars not to conquer," she said, her voice carrying through the silent hall. "We came to explore, to learn, to meet whoever else was out there in the darkness. We did not want war. We never wanted war. But when war came, we fought, because that is what we do. We fight for our families. We fight for our future. We fight for the right to exist." She paused, looking at the faces around her. "But fighting is not all we are. We are also builders, healers, dreamers. We are the species that sends people to die on frozen moons because we want to know what is under the ice. We are the species that build stations around dying stars because we want to understand how the universe works. We are the species that shows mercy to our enemies because we believe that everyone deserves a chance to live." She held up her hand, showing the simple gold ring on her finger. A wedding ring. A symbol of love and hope. Today, we are no longer enemies. Today, we become partners. Today, we start writing a new chapter in the story of this galaxy. And I promise you this. Whatever we build together, whatever we discover together, whatever we become together, it will be greater than anything we could have achieved alone. The treaty was signed, the war was over, and for the first time in 40,000 years, the Galactic Concord welcomed a new member. In the years that followed, human creativity transformed the galaxy. Dr. Amanda Price developed medical techniques that saved billions of alien lives. Tyler Morrison designed engines that opened travel routes thought to be physically impossible. Human artists, musicians, and writers shared their work with species who had never imagined such beauty could exist. And everywhere, beings who had once feared humanity began to understand what the precursors had truly meant. Humans were not dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because nothing could stop them from becoming better. Velketh lived to see the changes he had dreamed of. He spent his final years working alongside human historians, sharing everything he knew about the precursors. On the day he died, his last words were a quote from the prophecy. "They are our greatest gift." And somewhere, in the quantum echoes of the ancient archive, in the light that had burned for 4 billion years, the precursors watched their children finally come together. The persistent ones had reached the stars, and they had brought hope with them.